What is going on to all my Star Wars fans out there, and welcome back to my channel. Today we are here to discuss the new Disney Plus live action prequel series by the name of Andor. Now, Andor will be premiering on Disney Plus with its first 3 episodes. I have seen the first 4 episodes, and by the end of this review, I'm gonna let you all know if it's worth your time and should you be excited for Andor. We'll be talking about that and so much more in today's spoiler-free review. But before we get into it, if you haven't already, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting that notification bell. That way you don't miss out on any of the daily content. You can also give your boy a follow on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. All those links can be found in the description of this video. Make sure you give this video a thumbs up as well as share, but more importantly, share your thoughts in the comments. Were you excited for Andor? Are you a Rogue One fan? Are you a Star Wars fan? But more importantly, pertaining to Andor, what did you think of these first 3 episodes? Are you a fan? Will you be watching this on a week-to-week basis? Were you disappointed? Did you give up on the show after the first episode? And since we're talking Disney and since the acquisition of Lucasfilm, let me know your top 3 Disney Star Wars projects in the comments below. So I will be leaving time codes in the description of this very video because there's a couple things I want to tackle so you all can kind of know what we're handling in this video. So with that being said, the first thing I want to address is, for those that aren't too familiar with Andor, Elliot, what is this series about? Where does it fall in line in the Star Wars timeline? Well, to answer that question, Andor is a prequel to Rogue One. This particular show is taking place 5 years before those events, and this season, season 1, will consist of 12 episodes and will cover a year's worth of story. Now, with that being said, I think the next thing I want to let you all know as far as my Star Wars fandom goes, I am a fan. Now, I consider myself a casual Star Wars fan, meaning that I've seen all the live action movies. I own all the live action movies. And when it comes to OG trilogy, the prequel trilogy, and the new trilogy, I'm an OG fan. New Hope, my favorite Star Wars film. And then kind of transitioning into the Disney Plus Star Wars shows. Mandalorian, season 1, season 2, can't wait for season 3 because I love that show. It's my favorite Disney Plus Star Wars project. When it comes to Obi-Wan Kenobi and when it comes to Boba Fett, not the biggest fans of those series. And then just kind of tying it back to my anticipation, my excitement level for Andor, going back to the new trilogy. They're okay. They're not memorable to me, and I actually prefer the prequel series over the new trilogy of films. But going into Disney acquisition, Lucasfilm, my favorite project, my favorite film, I should say, from the new acquisition has been 2016's Rogue One. So going into my anticipation for Andor, I'm not the biggest fan of like going back in time, especially for those that have seen Rogue One. We know what happens to that character. But nonetheless, when I saw the trailer, when I knew who was all involved, especially bringing back Tony Gilroy and knowing that the writers worked on American Spy type of genres, and particularly the Americans on the FX, Tony Gilroy himself worked on the Bourne trilogy and directed and wrote the 4th Bourne, which wasn't the best of the franchise. But nonetheless, I was excited for the series, especially the most recent trailer. So going into my initial thoughts on the first 4 episodes, and I'll be honest with you all, I'm going to really focus on the first 3 episodes because that's the ones that you all will be seeing come this Wednesday, and I'll just kind of allude to certain things in episode 4 without giving too much away. And again, this whole review is a spoiler-free review. So with all that being said, my initial impressions, and then we'll break down the episodes without giving too much away. This is a very unique and a lot more personal of a story than I initially thought. Now, of course, as Star Wars fans, does it have the Star Wars feel, the vibe, the tone? Is it more of a Mandalorian tone? Is it more of a Boba Fett tone? Where I think it has its own kind of narrative and its own tone that it's creating within these first 4 episodes that I've seen. It's dark. It's gritty. It's serious. There's not a lot of poking fun and jokes and happy hurrah, hurrah. It's some kills and murders and people on the run and certain political decisions and certain, intellectual conversations that this show is bringing to the forefront. And as just putting my Star Wars card and my Star Wars fandom aside, as a fan of good storytelling, as a fan of the spy espionage, more dramatic thrillers, it's really hidden on those notes. Now, it doesn't come without its issues that we'll talk about here in a second, but just my initial impressions, y'all, this is something that I think will work for a lot of people that are fans of Rogue One, but I will touch on this a little bit later. I don't know if it's going to maybe necessarily reach out to a broader audience or bring in a new audience to Star Wars, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But let's kind of specifically talk about these first episodes. Now, as they gave me the first 4 episodes, they didn't have a name or anything, so I'm just going to be referring to them as episode 1. Now, just to let you all know, episode 1 was roughly about 35 or 39 minutes actually. And for the first 4 episodes, they range between 39, 35, and I think episode 4 was 40, and then episode 4 was like 47 minutes long. So, and to address that point, it never felt rushed. It feels like for those particular runtimes, they were able to give you in the most part, a satisfying story. It does build to the next, like 1 episode's in, and it builds right into the next one. So for those that have been watching Disney Plus, and for those that have been watching the Disney Plus Star Wars projects, but also the Marvel projects, some of those runtimes feel short, and they feel like they just end and they just run to the finish line. I didn't get that sense with at least the first 4 episodes. But talking about this first episode here, just to give you all an idea of my thoughts, and obviously this is pre-recorded before you all have gotten the chance to see it, I really enjoyed this first episode. Now, without giving too much away, I did find the story to be very personal. Like I had mentioned, we meet Andor at a particular point in his life in episode 1 where he is in danger, he is desperate, and he is cold-blooded. And when you see the first 5 minutes, which gave me this, and I'm a big fan of more particularly Blade Runner 2049, but very Blade Runner vibes, very kind of dark neon colors that were really kind of popping, and just kind of put me in that, again, this dark spy espionage kind of mindset. And I had, without getting too much away, but Andor, he, like I said, he's desperate. He is doing some things that questions his moral sensibilities, which I love the element of that character, even dating to Rogue One. He's not, necessarily an all good guy. He's not necessarily an all bad guy. He's he's not necessarily a bad guy, but he does some things that makes his morals questionable. And I love those characters. I love those complex characters, those gray characters, as we call it. So I love how we kind of go right into the story. And within this first episode, we get a hint of his childhood, going to Canary and kind of getting a little bit of an understanding of where he comes from. Now, when you see the show, you know what I'm referring to when I say this. The Canary childhood story takes a minute, and this is kind of my general thoughts of these first 4 episodes. This show is more concerned about its narrative and the story more so than it is in like giving you these big bombastic Star Wars lightsaber battles. It's a personal story. So for some people, when you get to that childhood Canary stuff, it's going to be like, okay, where is this going? Where's the payoff? And you get the payoff to an extent, especially when you all get to that 3rd episode. But not to jump too ahead of time, getting back to my thoughts on this first episode, I really enjoy kind of getting to meet the more secondary characters. For example, you meet Andor's friend by the name of Biggs. You also get an idea of kind of the threat that's at hand when we meet this Imperial officer who's investigating Andor off after he does something within the first opening sequence. So I would say, and kind of transition to my thoughts in the second episode. The first episode, it was nothing too spectacular that went down, but again, it's the personal stories, it's the world building, it's the different aliens, it's the score that really kind of warps you into this world and kind of gets you into the story. So there's some good levity moments. Again, this show is not meant to be for kids, I'll say that now, but it does have some kind of more lighter moments, and it kept me intrigued to go, okay, what's gonna go down next? Which brings me into my thoughts of episode 2, which roughly was around 35 minutes. This episode focuses more on the supporting characters. Now, Andor's still a very important character to show. Hell, it's his show, right? But I like how the show, again, this show does a really good job of building. It builds not only the world, but it builds these secondary characters. It builds off of their emotions. In particular, we get more into the struggles of Andor's childhood, and it shows how it connects in the main timeline, in particularly his thoughts, his feelings, his hatred towards these Imperial officers, and in particularly, obviously, towards the Empire. And I love how this second episode kind of emphasizes that hatred that's built from his time in Canary, and how that ties again into this particular story. Also, this sense of episode 1 is there, but in episode 2, and that's definitely in episode 3, it has like this ticking time bomb to it. Not a literal time bomb, but it always feels like there's something around the corner. It's a sense of that danger. It's that spy espionage that I mentioned that really plays well within this second episode. Only thing I will kind of mention, and when you see it, you know what I'm referring to, Episode 2 is probably my least out of the 4 that I saw due to the fact that it ended so abruptly. Again, knowing that this show is going to take place within a 1-year time span and that they're breaking it up almost into chapters in regards to episodes 1, 2, and 3 plays into a overarching story. Episode 4 and then obviously 5, 6, and this is 12 episodes. It kind of plays in that narrative. So again, it's an end of the chapter, which leads into personally my favorite episode, which is episode 3, which clocked in right around 35 minutes, 37 minutes. It ties everything together, from everything that builds in episode 1, everything that builds in episode 2. It all comes full circle. And man, I'm telling you all, the emotions really work, because there is a secondary plot involving Bix and a particular love interest that at first I really wasn't there for at all. And actually that particular relationship kind of steers the main Imperial aspect of the show, which I count to be a little cheap at first, but it does have a bit of a payoff. So again, this 3rd episode brings back home the Kenari childhood stuff, which again kind of plays to a very slow pace, but has its payoff in episode 3. We finally get the introduction to more of this dynamic of 2 characters that I'm really excited to learn more about, which is Andor and his relationship with Stellan Skarsgård character, and I thought their chemistry was just fantastic. There's a little bit more action in episode 3. Well, not a little. The most action in the first 4 episodes, or I should say the first 3 episodes, is more so in episode 3. But again, it builds to that point. It builds to that satisfaction, and once you kind of get the action further, rather than just having action for the sake of action, right? So I would say for me, out of the first 3 episodes, episode 3 was my favorite, and I would say out of the first 4 episodes, I still preferred episode 3 out of the entirety of the 4 that I saw. And again, I don't want to get too much to episode 4, but just know that it does build off of episode 3, the ramifications, the characters, the more of the political aspects is more highlighted in episode 4. I also don't want to overlook the impressive performances. Diego Luna as Cassian Andor is fantastic, but even the secondary characters, whether it be his android B, his really close friend, Marva and their relationship, Bix and their relationship, and how that plays into the overall narrative. And also, I want to point out, Inspector, I like that this show is giving us another side of the Empire, showing us their goals, their motivations. They're not just all evil. They have their own missions in mind, and I really enjoyed those elements. And again, the performances are top notch. So just generally speaking, overall thoughts, wrapping up this review here, I don't feel as though, and this is kind of going to a little bit of my criticisms, I don't feel as though this show is going to bring in, this is just based on the first 4 episodes, I don't think it's going to bring in a new audience. But I do think it's going to bring back some of the audience that wants more of that mature, more serious, a new tone, a more serious tone, a more mature story. And I also think that for those that love Rogue One, me being one of them, it hits on those same levels. Like I said, Tony Gilroy, who if you know some of the behind the scenes elements, some people might say that he is the reason why Rogue One turned out to be as great as I think it is. And you can see that within the way he tells a story, the writers he's working with, the direction, the score, all this stuff just encapsulates you within this narrative. And again, I can't stress enough how personal of a story this is. Again, I kind of knew it was going to focus on Andor, but I didn't know I was going to get this serious, this personal, and I'm really enjoying this narrative. I bring it all back to this show is going to be releasing on a week-to-week basis. Now, obviously, they released the first 3 episodes. I saw the first 4, and after the first 3, every week is going to be 1 episode per week. I am very intrigued to see the general audience perception of how this story is being told, because again, if once you see the first 3 episodes, it's a complete story of a sense, right? And then episode 4 propels into the kind of the next chapter of this 12 episode series. But I don't know if it's enough meat on the bone to really be warped into a 1 episode per week. I actually think they probably should have released 3 episodes per week. But hey, I could be wrong after we kind of move later down the season. But overall, I'm impressed. I'm not blown away, or I don't think it's the best thing since sliced bread. But I do think, as far as comparing to the other series, I still got Mando number 1, but based on these first 4 episodes, this series already trumps Obi-Wan and Boba for me, and I'm excited to see what it has up its sleeve, and I will be watching it. Now, I won't be reviewing it every week. I'll probably have like short reviews that I'll release on my YouTube channel, so keep an eye out for that. But hey, That's my thoughts. What worked, what didn't work, and ultimately, I think you should give it a watch. And when you do, let me know what you all thought. Your pros, your cons, your thoughts. How do you feel about the way they're going to be telling the story? How did you feel after this third episode? Were you disappointed? Were you satisfied? Let's talk about it in the comments. If you stuck around to this point of the review, I can't thank you all enough. Before you all leave, just a friendly reminder to like the video, share the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and hit that notification bell. That way you don't miss out on any of my content. Thank you so much. Hope you all are staying safe. Hope you enjoyed today's content. As you can see on the screen now, come and join the community. Check out my other Star Wars content. Check out my most recent breakdown. We'll catch you all on the next video.